Yeah, there you go.
Okay, all right. You want to talk Nakato at 62 points or Dan Hollins at 87 points?
Welcome to the Rugby Rant podcast show, your premier North American rugby podcast. Growing rugby, one fan at a time.
Welcome back, Rugby fans. It's yet time to be able to join us for another phenomenal season here on the Rugby Rant podcast show. And of course, some familiar fans will know these faces. Mine, of course, Ty, the Saffa Brago. Joining me is, of course, Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt. And returning for the umpteenth time, we bring to us John Cullen. Welcome back, my friend.
It's like his rugby career, man. He doesn't hang him up. He just keeps coming back for more.
Yeah.
Once you think I'm out, they keep pulling me back in.
I think I heard that somewhere. I'm not quite sure.
John will never ever say die, and he's here for another round.
It's funny because John and I were going back and forth probably a week or so ago, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm hanging him up." I'm like, "No, you're not. You're not hanging him up." He kind of had that wink.
Listen, I'm telling we're gonna talk about the state of the MLR, but I'm telling you, if teams are still desperate enough that someone is calling me again, we need to do something about our development.
Yeah, any chance you want to share who that might be?
No.
All right.
Well, for those of you unfamiliar with the name John Cullen, let me remind you that this guy is a former Eagle, Utah Warriors, and more recently you may have seen him wearing a green jersey. Well, Rob ruined it for a second. It's a Hounds jersey, but he was showing us a different color, which, by the way, is a great one there. And you had a successful season, their inaugural season as well. So a great opportunity to be able to continue your rugby. And we're going to continue it here with you today on the Rugby Rant, because we got exciting stuff lined up for our fans as we dive in today's episode 158. More importantly, we're going to be highlighting some of the news from around the rugby realms in just a moment. But then the final part of the show, the main act, so to speak, will to be talking more about the addition of a new franchise, or can we even call it that, is the question. The Charlotte Hawks, also a derivative of the USA Hawks, the development side for USA Rugby. We'll talk more about that in the coming moments of this show, episode 158. And we'll be back in just a moment to kick it off with Around the Pitch. All right, so gentlemen, you know, and the fans at home should know, this is where we highlight something important for everybody to pay attention to, something that may have been in the press, something that didn't necessarily get the highlights that it deserved, or maybe it's just something you thought was interesting. It's your moment to share with fans what you think is important. And to kick us off, we hand the honors over to our guest, John Cullen. Take it away, my friend.
Sweet. Thanks, Ty. I don't know if it falls into the obscure, didn't get enough press, but I think it's very important. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of people that watch the show or involved that haven't heard of it. But the Six Nations full contact documentary on Netflix that's coming up, I'm sure all of you that are directly going to consume this podcast have heard of it. But the news or the challenges, tell your friends, invite people over to watch Netflix. Do something like if you're trying to coax them into a game, coax them into a Netflix night. Suggest it to them. Oh, I don't know what to watch on Netflix. I've watched everything. Well, have you watched this? No, you haven't, because you haven't even heard of rugby. So watch it. That's the challenge. It probably gets enough pub, but tell your friends.
Yeah. I love it. John's always like, he's a combative guy. He's like, no, you haven't heard of it. Go watch it. Do it now. I love it. That's passion, man. That's passion.
Well, it's a great point, though, because I think the Six Nations starts in February 2nd, right? So right. I got to imagine that it's going to be coming out right in February to kind of partner or pair along with, or maybe the week prior to as a lead up to the Six Nations. So with the MLR starting a month later, what a great opportunity to start getting some of your friends that maybe have watched a game or two of club rugby, but haven't really gone to the professional game, get them to watch it. And if you live in one of those MLR cities, then use that to parlay and get them out to a
Right.
match.
What I love about it though is, and this is something that rugby hasn't traditionally done well, and hopefully gets the good result, gets the content numbers up, engagement numbers, I should say, and gets the minutes viewed, because it would warrant getting more stuff like this shown on Netflix or maybe Amazon or whoever the partner may be in the future. But what they haven't done well is sell the story. Here we hope to be able to see stories of players, injury woes, the tale, the turmoil, the struggle that comes with the game day and the build up to it, right? And this is when people really start to be captivated by the game, is by connecting with the personalities inside it. And that's what this Netflix special might be, the first of many able to do that. So, yeah. Good highlight from John. Make sure that you check it out on Netflix. It's coming out very shortly. But let's hand it over to Rob Hammerschmidt for the next piece.
Thanks. Speaking of Six Nations, this is really interesting. Probably a little bit more obscure than Full Contact. Apparently, the Guinness Six Nations is going to require the 6 teams involved to have last names put on their jerseys. Apparently, so like in the Fall Nations or Autumn Nations matches, England and Scotland, I think in Italy as well, all had their names on their jerseys. Now, all 6 Nations teams are going to have names on the back of the jerseys. And this is being done for a couple of reasons. They're obviously seeing a lot of revenue generated. I think it was from like Ronaldo came back to maybe, right. Came back to Real or something like that. And it generated something like 178 million pounds in revenue generated from jersey sales. And obviously with rugby team, with the tradition in rugby is numbers are an indication of position, not necessarily the individual player. They're trying to find some way to, to meet that medium between tradition, but also drawing new fans or casual fans into the game and getting them to identify with players. So I think it's a good opportunity. It's something that they actually did in the women's Six Nations in 2023, and it had some success. We know that the Women's Six Nations were well attended. They broke attendance records and they broke viewership records. So I think they're kind of trying to piggyback on some of the efforts they made during that Six Nations campaign and see if it can have a residual effect on the men's game. Let's hope it can. I love the idea. And the only thing I guess I'd say, as long as the names don't peel off and kind of look shabby, I think it's really great. I mean, I was going to bid on a John Cullen jersey like this, from last season, because he's my boy. But I know that some his local team was bidding on it to put up the clubhouse, so I deferred to them and bid on JP Eloff, which is actually over there. So,
go ahead, John. Jump in, please.
Well, it just makes sense, right? Like, we have these rugby values, and it's an entire podcast about how rugby values eats rugby alive when it comes to marketing. But a kid's gonna rock, or a dad's gonna rock a Scotland jersey, or everyone's gonna rock an Ireland or an All Blacks jersey. But the kid wants a Finn Russell jersey,
right?
The kid wants an Eben Etzebeth jersey. South Africa's jersey is great; it's beautiful, right? But kid, if there was a Dan Carter jersey that NZR was making a percentage off, just like NFL jersey sales, they'd make more than all their normal jersey sales. How many Michael Jordan jerseys are worn around the country outside of the city of Chicago? A lot.
Oh yeah.
Well, and that's just it. Is I know that there's a New Zealand like throwback jersey that has an 11 and Lomu at the top.
Right. I was going to bring that up.
Right. Think about it.
You should be able to walk into any. Oh, I forget the name. Whatever their weird one is down there. Whatever. Any Shields in Australia and New Zealand, and be able to get a Jonah Lomu jersey off the rack, or I'm be rude. Matt Giteau jersey off the rack.
Maybe you can this year. I heard he's coming back.
Or a George Gregan jersey. You should be able to get anytime. Rocking it like you're rocking like an Aikman jersey.
Now, and I tell you, when I was playing, and I was playing lock at the time, like when I just started playing, I got an Australia jersey. I got a number number 5 on it for John Eales because he captained that 99 side that won the Rugby World Cup. And so, I was like, yeah, get John Eales because he's the man. So imagine now we add the name onto it and it kind of legitimizes the purchase of that jersey and the support of the player.
Oh, yeah. But, a moment ago, I spoke about it in regard to the Netflix production for the next Netflix special. That you get the narrative, you get the story, you get the persona, you get all these personalities connected not only to the jersey, the number, but then the person that owns that jersey for that moment or earns it, not necessarily owns it. But
for a couple of years there, USA Rugby would have made more off a Carlin Isles jersey than they would in all the stupid club dues that every club in this country has to pay.
You might be right.
And that would have been from outside of U.S. sales.
Yeah. But they did that with a recent iteration. I thought they were making some jerseys with some of the USA players on there. I was thinking about buying a Wengalewski. I mean, the only problem is obviously I think the jerseys were like $60 for a T-shirt, with the name printed. I'm like, it's a lot of money for a T-shirt. You could legitimize it for 20 or 25 or, even 30. But, I think that price has got to hit the sweet spot, too.
Very important point, though, too, because it's got to be accessible, right? You're not going to sell it or it's not priced right or it doesn't have the right appeal. And certainly some jerseys are going to sell more than others. Absolutely. That's just the nature of it when it comes about that you've got some who have a higher prestige than other players.
If they would add some John Cullen jerseys, they'd have freaking knocked it out of the fucking park and shit.
Could have bought the first one in 1994. Okay, gentlemen, we could probably turn this one by the looks of it, but I wanted to take the opportunity to dive into one of the pieces that I also want fans to know. We spend so much time talking about USA Rugby, and when we do, we highlight USA Rugby itself, and we also talk about Major League Rugby, but there is another great American side continuing to be able to do what they do and what they consider to be the premier cross-continental competition. That, of course, is Super Rugby Americas and the American Raptors, of which I will be at every one of the home games this season as one of the announcers. So personally, I'm going to be connected with it. And I'm going to keep giving you guys the news that you need to learn about when it comes to their efforts and that cross-continental competition, which has incredible value and a wonderful potential for years to come. And they're going to be kicking off this February. In fact, I think it's February 16th. I wrote my notes down here. Let me double check. That's right. February 16th against the Doggos 15. There's 2 Argentinian sides, one of which is the Doggos, and then the other is Pampas, which they will do on the following week, February 23rd. Those are the first 2 games you guys should pay attention to. There is some incredible talent that is emerging through their programs there. It, of course, is housed at Rugby Town, USA, formerly Colorado XO, formerly. But it is an incredible game that they play. You can catch it on, I believe it's on, last year it was ESPN, and it was also, I think, at one stage on the Rugby Network. I'll stay close to find out where we'll be showing, and wherever it is, you can assume it's going to be free to view. So take advantage, and why not get to be able to see even more rugby than you had asked for or anticipated this season with American Raptors in mind. So, gentlemen, there we have it, an opportunity to be able to share what we think is important, what fans need to know about. Tell us whether you think we forgot about something as a fan by following us under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod on all of our social media platforms. We want to be able to hear from you. We want to share what you want to learn about. So continue to be able to tell us what that might be under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod. But before then, stick around because we're going to be back in just a few moments to talk about the new edition of the Charlotte Hawks to USA. Sorry, should I say MLR Rugby? We'll be back. Stick around. All right, and welcome back, rugby fans. We're here to be able to debate the main story. This one recently came about through a little bit of turmoil. It's been a turbulent time to be in Major League Rugby. At one stage, we were at 14, then down to 10. I don't know. It feels like somebody trying to explain to me what is the Big Ten and what is the conferences in college football, because there's never 10 in it. There's 12 in one. There's 14 in the other. It's a bit of a mess by all standards.
And nobody in the MLR can keep a secret very well either. That's the other thing. I mean, things broke on social media, Reddit, etc. before we had any snippet.
So let me take the moment to be able to identify more clearly for those tuning in what is the topic of debate. So in the fallout of New York, the Arrows, and the change of location and position from Rugby ATL's traditional home across back to LA, where we get another franchise in an important region, there's been a lot going on. And just when we got the schedule released and we knew what we thought we were going to be in for, suddenly there's another curveball and we have to be able to change the calendar again. Why? Because the Charlotte Hawks have arrived. Who are they? Well, for those of you not familiar with this, it is a development program that is identified primarily under 23-year-old players in hopes of creating a platform for them to be able to exceed expectations, get great competition, perform in a professional environment, and eventually represent the United States on the world stage at the 27 Rugby World Cup and 31 on home soil. That was funded in part previously by USA Rugby and also some Major League Rugby partners. Now, with the backing of World Rugby, which is really, none of this is going to happen without extra money, usually what it comes down to, and who is providing the piggy bank sources? World Rugby, not only for this season, but for seasons to come, is the understanding. So we got longevity in mind, and the Hawks are going to be no longer solely a development program, but they're going to be a fully fledged member of Major League Rugby, competing as any other franchise would. However, they do have some challenges and they do have some other long-term goals that they need to achieve to satisfy the investment from World Rugby, USA Rugby, and Major League Rugby itself. The gentlemen here between Rob and John, I am going to steer a few questions your way. You're going to give us your opinion as we do week after week here on the Rugby Rant. And I want to hear from you guys what you think. And first off, John, here's the first prompt. Development versus immediate impact. A lot of people online have already said, is the focus going to be that they're going to be a competitive team? Are they going to come out guns blazing? Are they going to just be cannon fodder for every other MLR side and easy points on the board because they're fielding a very young team and their focus is not about winning a league, but by growing a team to represent the USA? So development versus immediate impact, where do you stand?
Yeah, I think some of the point of views are correct. They're just kind of weird where it's like that development and competing are two separate entities. Like you can't develop and be competitive and want to win at the same time. That's a really weird thought process that I see online all the time. Like if I'm developing guys to go play for the national team and win a World Cup, I'm developing them to win rugby games. So it's kind of samesies. Now, if your argument is, will they be competitive and have an impact? My gut's going to say no, because for all the reasons that are right in front of us. One, it's very late. However in the world they're going to find 35 under 23-year-old U.S. eligible players able to move to Charlotte, North Carolina in the next couple of months and or leave their current MLR teams? Good on you, whoever is their GM and player development guy, and whoever's doing their housing, my God, good luck to you.
They must be doing a good job of recruiting me if they got it right.
Yeah, whoever's doing their housing, my God, good luck to you. Those are some of the side stuff, but the development piece, I think, is very attainable. The impact and competitiveness is going to be very difficult. I mean, we've seen MLR teams with professionals and full-grown men struggle in their first couple seasons. We've seen, I just was a part of one that was, you could call it a struggle. I mean, everyone could have their own interpretations of a struggle, but we didn't reach expectations as a team, that's for sure.
Right.
And that was a team full of professionals, internationals,
Right.
and
But the
experienced
point is,
players.
you know exactly what an inaugural season looks like, having done it.
Right.
And you know, even when you put the right pieces together, the puzzle doesn't always fit.
So if their expectations are that, they're competing for a championship, I think that's a little bit silly. And I don't take Scott Lawrence as like a BS coach talk guy. So I don't think that's going to be up on the board. I think if there are development criteria and things that they're going to go by and stand by and set realistic goals and expectations and what they want to see, yeah, of course they're going to accomplish that, no doubt.
Let me throw this back at you. Realistic in your mind. Let's put your coach's hat on for a moment. You're in the chair of Scott Lawrence. If he chooses to even take that chair, it's still debated. What would you say is realistic? What would be a measurement of success in year one? I mean, you've been through it. You've had these conversations with the Hounds.
It wouldn't. I bet there would not be one point of conversation about wins and losses.
Yeah.
Not one. I would not doubt that for a second. There wouldn't be even a discussion about wins and losses. It would be seeing what you got, what they're capable of, and where they can go, and then you've got to plan that out. So just kind of realistically, you're talking about defensive strategies and executions, line out technique, style, and expectations. Scrum technique.
Build a team, build something that's got more than 1 year's vision,
Right. You've got long-term things of using this to establish a defensive attack and line-out based strategy or style that's going to academy develop itself into the national team.
Right. So this all circles back around to what you originally said when I said development versus immediate impact. And you said, well, it's kind of a weird conversation because obviously any team that's developing or even new wants to be competitive. They want to make an impact. That's how you measure if your development is working. So you're saying that both those things align because it's the first season. It doesn't matter like what team it is. You're going to want to try to make an impact, but you're not counting wins and losses as your impact.
Right. And I want to follow that up too. Like some people may take this wrong. That doesn't mean they're going to walk into film on Monday after giving up probably 45 to 50 points against San Diego or whoever they play in the first game and be like, no worries, boys. We're going to get better and develop. So don't feel too bad about like those conversations.
Had fun.
Yeah. I'm just glad you guys were all out there and had fun. Like those conversations are not going to happen. Like they're not going to be happy about that.
Right.
But they're also not going to walk in like, hey, we just got to do our job and be on the field and you're going to beat San Diego. That's also silly. It's like, hey, you're going to have to do every single thing that we've told you to do right and not make mistakes for 80 minutes, and we might have a shot to win it, which is a marginally impossible task for every single rugby team that's ever stepped on a field. But here's the criteria. Here's what we want to see from you.
Right. And it makes sense. And to sum it up for our fans tuning in here, it sounds to me like you're saying that the development goals aligns with your first season goals anyways, which is to be able to play good looking rugby, to learn from every opportunity, to be able to grow your team, work on the basics, build continuity, so they are aligned with each other. Will they make an immediate impact to be able to be in a playoff run and possibly a title run? That's not the expectation in year one from most teams. So why would it be put upon this team? Rob, what have you got to share?
So I think Scott Lawrence is playing the long game. It's really about development. And I agree with John. It's not like they want to sit there and look losses that they have, and they will have them in the face and go, all right, here's a trophy for you. Good job. Here's a trophy for you. They're not going to do that, but there is a long game. Breaking news here. This was in the works better part of a year ago when we lost the opportunity to play in the World Cup in 2023. There was a plan in place. And initially the Hawks were brought about and there was talk and discussion. Don't forget, they played some exhibition games against, Super Rugby Americas. I believe the idea was either get into Super Rugby Americas with a team or get into the MLR with a team. But the idea was we've got to have these young players playing at least 16 games a season together, in addition to some international competition branded as, the Falcons, or branded as U23 Eagles, or whatever they're going to be branded as. Doesn't matter. We've got to get them playing, 20, 30, 20 games together, or minimum a season. And yeah, that will be a core of guys. And will there be guys, coming in and out for the international components? Yes. But we want to establish a brand of rugby. We want to have a pattern of play. We want to have a style of play, all the things that John talked about. And I think that's part of the long game, right? Now, what I believe is going to happen is, yes, they're going to bring in those young guys, but I believe that they're going to bring in some of those guys that have Eagles experience, that are long in the tooth. I don't know if Nate Brakeley has the person. I mean, John probably knows Nate better than any of us here. But
USA experience, long in the tooth.
Long in the tooth, but he's the type of guy that they might be able to recruit and come back and go, "Hey, Nate, give it one more year. We need you. We
Charlotte's
need
really
you."
hot summer. I don't know. Hold on.
So we need you to come in, and we need you to provide that.
Cool.
Let's not forget he was a captain of the Eagles here most recently. And we need you to come in, and we need you to establish a leadership, some leadership principles. We need to have you establish some leadership style. We need, some veterans in here that are going to ingrain these young guys into the Eagle system and the Eagle way of playing. And so, I think there are guys out there. To me, it's a shame that this didn't happen sooner. Like, it wasn't announced in July on the heels of the final or on the heels in August of the MLR draft, to where, okay, by happenstance, New York, falls apart. Now they can take a guy like Butch and bring him in. He's certainly a leader on the Eagles that would steer that ship the way they want to go. I believe they're going to try to find that mix, right? So don't be surprised if this isn't just made up of U23 guys and these young guys that they have an eye on being in the mix for 2027. I believe that they're going to use some of the vets involved to really ingrain the style of play and the attitude that Scott wants to establish in this.
I'm so glad that you brought this up, though, because it's already walking straight into the next theme that I wanted to touch on, which is leadership. And you spoke about this. Not only is it on the field, but also in the administration, and also in the coaching style. There's a lot of different aspects to be able to look at, but team identity and leadership are very much linked. So the identity of the team up until now has been suggesting that it's the development side, and how it originally existed is mostly 23-year-old and under players, because that perceived as the generation is going to take you on to 27 and on to 31. Definitely a lot of great merit behind that. But as Rob pointed out a moment ago, in order for you to make an impact and also to be able to get the right leadership that nurtures that generation, next generation, you need to have some experience. So certainly they might go shopping for those players that you pointed out, Rob, and those that fit that bill similar to that are available to be able to take up a position like that. John's taking phone calls left, right, and center already, he says. But Scott Lawrence has been a logical choice. Being at the helm for USA Rugby to be able to take this on. He's got Major League Rugby experience, formerly with Rugby ATL as a key partner and also as the head coach. He's got USA Rugby experience, the development level with the U20s. So if he chooses that, it's a natural fit. If he doesn't choose to take that, we're going to see who will be the head coach, but I'm sure he'll be very heavily involved. They still got to put together a coaching complement. Although the identity of the team is identified as the Charlotte Hawk, playing from Charlotte. There's great facilities there. They've got a stadium that they previously used, which we assume will be their home for the future as well, although it hasn't officially been announced. I can't remember the name of that stadium. Anyways, doesn't make a difference right now. So they need to be able to get now that they're in MLR side, some sort of fan engagement, sell some seats, get some money coming back. Because not only can you imagine that USA and World Rugby and the MLR partners are putting money into this, they're seeing it as an investment, and all investments have to pay out at some point. They have to show dividends at some point. We can measure that in different ways. Let's put it out on the table here. Team identity and leadership, and also measuring some of these successes when it comes to those two things. John, what are some of the thoughts that you have around identity, fan engagement, and also leadership?
Yeah, the fan engagement and developing that, I have no idea. It's how much are they? I guess here's my thing: how much are they going to embrace being the Charlotte Hawks, not the U23 Hawks? Because you have to do that if you want to sell tickets. I'm sorry, you can't. I don't know what marketing guy can fake sell a faux U23 versus other pro team games for teams to come to. Right. Charlotte people will go see Charlotte sports. I would assume you can sell that. Right. So they got to embrace the Charlotte Hawks. Please don't have red, white, and blue colors. I just don't think it will. It's just not going to work because then you're not the Charlotte Hawks. You're the Hawks.
That's true. Yeah.
Really have that if – okay, perfect. That was a fake one, whatever. Whatever.
Yeah, it was.
Like blue. One, we already have too many red, white, and blue teams. Not that that's a bad thing, but we already have too many. And then you're not the Charlotte Hawks. The U23s, the U20s
right.
can be
got to have their own identity, their own brand.
The Ravens or the Condor or pick some cool bird. Who cares? You got to be the Charlotte Hawks, and you got to embrace that. While if you're sticking to your basis of the core principles of the team as U.S. eligible only players and all that, by hell, you could sell that for sure. No question.
And that's something that a lot of people have been waiting for, right? For one team to be able to stand
for a team to step up and do that, I think that's awesome. As obviously as a born and bred American,
but your team has had it at its core development as its focus, so it is a positive shift, and one that probably suits the MLR better than they might admit.
So if they do that, I think they could possibly have some success. If they don't, and somehow.
Because to that point, though, even if I'm not a Charlotte fan, I could still very well be a fan of the Hawks because of that philosophy.
Right.
American players first.
Yeah, yeah. If you're on the fence as an MLR fan, or you live in Atlanta and don't know anyone to root for, pretty easy to get on board with that one. Yeah. Sorry, Atlanta. That was a shot fired at Atlanta.
There's another great opportunity to think about, okay, well, we've got fans here. We've got a community not that far away. That maybe we should try to find ways to be able to build rugby ties and bring them over as fans to the Hawks. So there are opportunities to do that.
Yeah, I'm interested. I'm very interested to see how they go with that. I obviously want it to be successful, but there's a lot of ways it could go wrong, so they got to get it right.
Right. Here's one of the other things that I would like folks to be able to think about. Not only is the goal here, I would believe, to be able to create players that eventually would represent USA on the highest levels. We know that's a vision. We know that's a goal. They've come out right and said that. But it's also an opportunity for American rugby to be able to say, we can actually make a business and run a profitable franchise. We can learn the administration. We can budget. We can create a franchise, because essentially this is a branch, in a way, of what USA Rugby is. You've got USA Rugby coaches that are going to use, USA Rugby potential players that are going to use, mostly American eligible or will be eligible within the next few years, most likely. So it's an important opportunity for them to be able to say, hey, we can run a budget properly. We can produce good results on the field and also off the field. So there's a lot of great ways to be able to do this, because it's one of the criticisms with USA Rugby is that when they get money, they spend it unwisely and they don't get the great results. So here's your chance. Here's your way to be able to show everybody again that you can do something good with what you're given. Rob, I'm sorry I jumped a little bit further along there, but I hand it over to you now.
I want to address two things. One of them touches a little bit upon that viability piece and the long-term elements that come that are sustainable through funding and through commercial partnerships and ticket sales and all that other stuff. But I want to address something first. You talked about the team identity and leadership. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to throw some names at you. Okay. And these are names that have always been close to Scott. And, John, you probably had some conversations with Scott, or at least have some familiarity with him. But Brendan Keene is a guy that's been in the mix, worked with Scott heavily in the past. Brandon Sparks. He's currently in the women's development and identification process with USA Rugby. So he's already in the USA Rugby mix. Neith Greeling, somebody we've had, and we've had Brandon on the Sparks.
Yeah, he's popular for
he followed Scott from when Scott left ATL, and then Scott got the USA job. He followed him up to be with the Hawks when they moved up to Charlotte and started kind of this newest, the last iteration of the Hawks that started, with this youth movement and U23s, et cetera, there in 2023. And then imagine Jimmy Harrison's got to be involved in some way, probably not on a real overt way, but probably involved in a lot of the video analysis, because he's doing it for USA Rugby. So those are guys that I would expect to be in the mix at some point, in some way, somehow, some form, some fashion, just with the leadership. I don't think Scott is going to be the head coach of this team. I think he's got enough to worry about going around the country, going and visiting MLR teams, watching different players play in order to make, and identify guys that he wants on his roster that are playing a style and able to play the style that he's looking for. He's going to be going around to, sevens programs, and, and I know he's out at various, events this summer. So he's got his hands full there. And I know one thing about Scott, it's something that he and I have talked about actually before, and he likes to develop coaches underneath him. He's not afraid to develop a guy that he has kind of said he wants him to take his job. Right.
You have to empower those around you to be successful.
Right. You put those people in so that you can step away when you're ready. You know that you're putting it in good hands and you're leaving something in a good place, better than when you got it. And you're going to see it get better from when you leave it. So I know that's Scott's mantra. So I just don't think he's going to be involved in at least in a hands-on way from a head coaching standpoint. Now, here's one thing I want to make a point of, and this is one of my concerns about the Hawks endeavor. Don't get me wrong. I love the idea. I think it's necessary for the growth of USA Rugby with an eye in 2027 and 2031. My issue is in execution. And so I'm going to go to the fact that what's funding this is not a traditional ownership style like what's typical in the MLR. It's being funded in large part by World Rugby money. My concern is, unless those commercial partnerships, unless those things that John talked about, unless you get a great fan base that's paying, putting butts in seats, you won't be able to be sustainable without World Rugby, or B, if you don't find success, you won't be able to find an owner out there that's willing to take up the slack for World Rugby. And therefore, that's my big concern, is that this, is there a sustainability without World Rugby, right? And we know World Rugby is incredibly fickle, right? As soon as they're disinterested, their money goes away, right? And so this team, that's going to be one of their long-term challenges, finding that sustainability, financial sustainability, so that they can continue to be a part of the MLR and they can continue to allow that development that John talked about in the first segment to happen in a natural path as we get closer to those big earmarks in 2027.
Right. And I think that's going to be some of the toughest challenges. We're confident in the player development, the coaching staff, the infrastructure, the logistics. They will have that because they've got experience in that. Where they don't have experience is developing a brand from nothing, which is what they're doing. It's materialized overnight. Now, there's coming from transfer from here and there.
Remember, Scott was involved in branding with ATL, so he was GM and coach of that organization. So he does have experience there, and I think he's gonna. While he won't have a direct hands-on, as I said, he's gonna put a stamp on things.
Right, sure, okay, but he's not going to be the guy doing it every day. So who's going to be there is the next question. And are they going to be able to follow through? Are they going to hit the metrics? Because World Rugby doesn't give you any money without any strings.
No,
So there's
no,
going to be metrics
no,
that have to be hit along the way,
100%.
right?
But
So,
if there's a guy, and that's where I think he's going to be involved, right? Is what are the what are the goals? What are the objectives? What do they call them? RTIs? No, or
all right.
RP, yeah, ROI, whether return on investment, but also KPIs. You know, um, so he's going to establish those for the staff, for the coaching staff, for the organization as a whole, and go and hold people's
I get
feet to
that.
the fire.
You know, he's the CEO. He doesn't have to, he's the captain. He doesn't have to know where the navigator puts, the dot on the map, but we know that we're headed in the same direction. And certainly that is a goal, but this circles back around to something that I said before, and you've now gone even more in depth of it. Not only is this, in my opinion, an opportunity to be able to grow American talent, to be able to take on the higher honors, but it's an opportunity to grow as an organization as well, through developing brand building exercises, marketing tools, a channel that is sustainable through revenue in several different streams, not only through merchandising, not only through ticket sales, but of course to make this a profitable business. Because rugby, where it fails, not only here in the US, but everywhere, is when you treat it like a business, right? And I say that because no sport can survive without revenue. And you can't continue to ask for handouts. And as you pointed out, World Rugby is incredibly fickle. You might be their favorite nephew right now, but you can certainly fall out of favor as quickly as you fall into favor. And you got maybe 4 or 5 years to get this right. Let's be generous and say that they're going to continue funding this until the end of the next next World Cup cycle before they evaluate again, right? Or there's another presidency or another person put in charge of that development program, and they have a different opinion. So much like any other MLR franchise, you need to prove your worth and prove that it's sustainable inside of 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and nobody understands World Rugby, at least from American perspective, better than Scott. He gets it.
Right.
He knows all those things. He knows what the expectations are, and he knows the challenges of dealing with World Rugby just in terms of their finances and sustainability. So like I've always been a big believer in him. I will continue to be a big believer until he proves me wrong, but everything he's done well, and he's met the benchmarks that he sought to meet. So I have no doubt that this will be the same. My concerns come from another area, which we can get into further down this conversation.
Before we transition out of this one and into our final piece, I was just looking at another piece of information here. America's Rugby News, obviously a wonderful resource for American rugby fans, North American rugby fans in general. They suggest that while most teams in the US, I think it's 10 is the limit for a game day roster of internationals. I might be wrong, but I believe it was 10. They're suggesting that they will not exceed 6 is what they got. So, that's 4 less than what you would see. So obviously you can expect 6 internationals on the starting day roster for the Hawks. That's where that experience is going to come from. Now you need to be able to have a little bit of this, but I think that when they say international, it means that yes, they can be international, but the focus might very well be that they're having internationals who have not yet qualified, but may very well qualify before the next round of World Cups is due.
Exactly. And there's so I think back, a couple of years ago, a guy like, Brad Tucker, a guy like Reichert Hadding, guys that were guy like a gentleman you played with, Michael Duvall, that were all kind of in that process to get that 5-year earmark. They're going to identify guys who have been here for 3 and 4 years, or young guys who they can build towards that, towards that benchmark, that time, 5-year time frame, by the time, 2027 hits. So that's where I would see those 6 players coming into play more in that
and
regard.
That makes total sense to me.
Yeah. Then bringing in, Matt Gettu, right?
Right. Although, I can forgive 1 or 2 key positions because of experience and you want to remain competitive in the league. But if you can avoid it, I would choose to do that because there is enough talent. And recently I read an article and it was actually a wonderful opportunity to be able to see how you turn lemons into lemonade. And New Zealand is looking to quickly follow this. South Africa at one stage in its history did not allow any overseas based player of South African nationality to be selected for its national side. New Zealand still has this policy. Well, guess what? That was lifted some years ago with the help of Rassie Erasmus, wonderful genius that he is, or, you may consider him an evil genius to some. Right. If you call him an evil genius or a genius, either way, same thing for us. So why I bring it up though, Ninabe, who of course was representing South Africa at this last World Cup alongside Rassie Erasmus, now taking up a coaching spot in Ireland, was interviewed, and he said actually this was a really, really good thing for rugby. Not only did they gain experience elsewhere, but what it allowed was domestically for players to fill those spots and get more opportunities and more game time, and to finally identify a lot more talent than we might have overlooked, and they might not have had that chance to play on the best domestic stage that we have available to us. So instead of being able to have one guaranteed pick for each position, they were spoiled and had 3 or 4 good options for each position. That's where you want to be in America. That's why you want to have more starting players of American origin or eligibility as often as possible.
Sure. The only big difference is they have the full complement of kids playing and developing through the system.
Sure.
You've talked about it. Yeah, like
yes,
Ty's talking about.
But you're not going to get there if you don't set it up that way, right? So what I'm suggesting is if you continue to be able to play,
chicken and the egg.
Yes, but there's enough guys to be able to create. Maybe that won't be as competitive as every other team, but this is the right team to be able to do it with. Is what I'm getting at. Okay.
Yeah,
so gentlemen.
We're going down. We're going down a different path. I've got too much to stay up.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to turn our attention to the last part, which is long-term impact on USA Rugby. We've already touched on some of these points. We've spoken about the coaching. We've spoken about picking players of American origin or eligibility. We know that has an opportunity to be able to create chances for players to represent the US for the 27 and 31 Rugby World Cups. Let's again try and talk big picture with this. John, your final thoughts. How does this impact the future of USA Rugby?
I think with everything we discussed about, there's got to be a net positive no matter what. If you're getting more guys playing more good games, the level or depth that will be, it will remain to be seen. The one thing that Rob kind of touched on, we touched on it a little bit, that I'd like to see that may, if we really want to talk like big picture and development, is who are the coaches going to be? Are they going to be U.S. coaches? Which I know you can't, we don't use the term U.S. eligible coaches because coaches come in every other country, coaches come from all over, but we don't have the benefit of having so many coaches. They have to go overseas for other jobs. I'd love to see, as they're embracing this whole thing, is that we have American coaches and guys that are from here and grew up here, and if I'm being completely honest, are going to stay here and keep that knowledge going, whether it be an MLR job or a college job or whatever job they have after this, they keep that going. And we get to the point where we have so many American coaches coaching that we start filtering out and becoming that group.
Yeah, once you have a surplus, you're in a pretty good position.
Right. And it's, you know what I mean? Like, I've learned a ton from every international player, international coach I've had. I appreciate all of them. But I'm lying if I don't want to say that there isn't something in me of why I have to have an international coach to be properly coached. I don't like that's an accepted fact right now. So I think besides the development of the players, another challenge for them, if they would embrace it, is the ability to develop more coaches and have U.S. coaches in these head coach, forward coach, defense coach roles. Academy, well, it already is kind of an academy, so you can't have an academy coach, but Yeah, I would love to see that. I'd love to see all American coaches. It's, Rob mentioned if that's kind of another one of Scott's things of developing coaches, I think this should go right along with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's like, the future of American rugby is not only on the field, but off the field as a concept. And nurturing one generation is not only extended to the players, but the coaches and also, officiating. You need to be able to lift the quality of all of those, referees, everybody. It should be, there should be more opportunities at all levels to be able to nurture American rugby players, coaches, everybody. And you pointed out a moment ago is that it's not like you're eligible, but you want to make sure that even if they're not originally from the US, that they plan to stay here and continue their rugby in the US.
Right. I would think of like names like Robbie dropped some names. I'd say like a Kyle Sumption or a Sean Davies. Sean's like
yeah.
Sean's like 0.85 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He barely speaks Afrikaans. He's been here for years. He's like 0.85 American.
As well, I swear. But when you put your rugby career, most of your time into the US, you can say that you are a supporter of American rugby. You were out there, Davies himself, played it, coached it, assisted the game in growing in some way, left it better than where you found it. And that's the main principle, the underlying message there. If you stack it in all different categories with those type of people, the future of USA Rugby will be bright because you're putting the right people in the right places who are going to stick around and put in the work.
Right.
Rob, what have you got?
Okay, long-term impact on the United States. Well, again, I think the key is, are we going to have a funding model that's going to go beyond and live beyond World Rugby? I think that's a key and critical question. Is there a pathway to get free of World Rugby's teat in this particular case? I think that's a critical question that hopefully is being mapped out or at least being addressed in some way. On the coaching end, I want to be clear, and I get what John is saying. Like when we talk about an American coach, we're not necessarily talking about born and bred in America. I mean, obviously that's ideal and we want to see that continue. John's a great example of that, doing his own great work in Iowa. But like, here are some examples. Like Taylor Howden is a guy who's coaching, who's been here, who was with, I think, the Aviators or something like that, born in New Zealand, but, when I say American, he's been in the United States, committed to the United States rugby, been here, not going anywhere. He understands the American rugby culture. So a guy like that, Nate Osborne, in the same mold. I'm not saying those are necessarily guys that I want to see developed into this system. I'm just throwing out examples of guys who are, although foreign born, are still considered American coaches because they've developed, they're committed to it, and they're developing here and want to see American rugby become developed. But don't be surprised if we don't see somebody of note man this ship, somebody who can bring some panache, somebody who can bring international eyes, somebody who can bring a professionalism to help these young guys along. Okay.
Who's the coach that just got fired?
Well,
John?
We can't afford him. You're out of your mind.
But yeah, I agree in general with John. Like, look, I don't care if they're foreign born or not, as long as they're committed to staying here and developing here and going to pass out knowledge along to American coaches who are going to be at the youth levels, who are going to be at the college levels. So we can see that those
long time,
what's that?
The hard thing about getting an international is that that they're only going to be here for a short while. So you need to be able to soak up as much as you can in as short a time as possible. Heineken Meyer going into Sabercats is an example, right? Who's made it committed. Human as well, a coach, 2 South African coaches brought on. And as a result, their influence in that team is predominantly South African. So it does bring an influence with it.
Sure.
But it doesn't always suit American rugby or help American rugby. I'm not picking on the Sabercats here. I'm not
right. Yeah. If for some reason their ties with the Sabercats are broken, they're going back home. But like Emil Walton is a guy who's been here, who's brought that foreign understanding and foreign influence, and who's committed to developing that. He did it down in Louisville. He's been with Nav Sevens, So,
but both of those guys, but all those examples were here in America in the rugby community before getting a position of that nature. If you're suggesting somebody is getting a position to come in from outside just to fill that role, I don't think it has the roots to it. I don't think it has the community reach. I don't think it has that. It's going to be more like the same pattern that we've seen before.
And that's why I'm saying I think there's got to be a development. It's got to be somebody who's is willing to be committed to development.
You want to
my opinion.
If it's an outside guy, you want a Mike Friday and not a John Mitchell. Yeah, that's all I'm asking. Yeah, I want a Mike. If you're coming in to do the Hawks, I need a Mike Friday commitment. I don't need a John Mitchell.
Correct. Agreed. 100%.
Somebody who's going to be here for the long run.
Yeah,
right?
You're not using it for your next job.
Right. And
did you play for Mitchell?
No, I was in boot camp or basic training, airborne school, and medic school during his stint.
Gotcha. Okay.
Slightly different pathway.
But I'm not saying I think John Mitchell was a damn good coach. We at least scored points when he was our coach. It was awesome. I was watching on my laptop, and we scored like 40 points for the first time in U.S. history, probably.
But the thing is like they have a purpose at the right place in the right time, and there's always a tool for every job, right? But the set of tools that we now need to be able to put together needs to have longevity in mind. I personally would be disappointed to be able to hear that somebody from completely outside of USA Rugby doesn't really have a lot of deep connections to it or deep insights, comes in with an international influence and shares what they think we need to do, which is how it's always been done before. Most recently, Gary Gold is an example. Again, not casting shadows or throwing stones, but they were not the results that we wanted. And a lot of the times people criticize it because it wasn't an American coach. He didn't understand the American rugby culture or the climate or those things. All of that aside,
style of play.
Style of play. You could pick a number of things, right? That why it wasn't. So, and we've got more examples going further years back. So why would we choose to repeat that if we are going to? I'm just saying, doing the same thing. I'd be disappointed if we didn't.
The only thing I would say is that you can bring a guy like that in if then you have pieces around him that can kind of bolster up all the elements you're talking about. Understanding U.S. rugby culture.
But that's everything being able to do. Gary Gold had assistant coaches who were all American backs. That's already been done. And it's but
that's at but you're talking about at the national team level, right? We're talking about a slightly different entity.
I mean,
you still have Scott Lawrence at the top of that eagle at the helm of the Eagles.
Okay, I see what you're saying. You're saying it's the same, but not the same. But it's kind of the same,
right?
There's only one international coach I want, and he would never do it.
Out of curiosity, who would that be?
Yeah,
Ronan O'Gara.
Okay.
There's nothing. I said this for a long time. I will say it forever. Our fascination here with Southern Hemisphere rugby is not us.
Oh, you mean
we're also not England. We're definitely not South Africa. I was like, the closest nation we are to rugby, as no American likes saying this, but I'll say it, is France. The way they play and how they play, the mixtures that they have of cultures, ethnicities, and backgrounds in that country that are brought together on a rugby field, and the styles that they bring of like their mix match French style is the closest person USA Rugby should mirror in the world. We're never going to be New Zealand. We're not going to be South Africa. We're not going to be this bastardized version of both of them put together. The closest thing we got is France. And O'Gara brings that Irish strict discipline,
right,
brought into the French flair at La Rochelle and has done it beautifully, he would be our magical coach. Not that I want Scott replaced. Nobody get mad at me. Scott, you're a great guy.
On your top of your wish list.
I'm just saying, wish list of obviously he's not going to leave La Rochelle to coach the Charlotte Hawks, but I'm just saying, for me, that's my, yeah, maybe World Rugby pockets. That's my like golden goose.
Okay, I like that. I like that. Well, it remains to be seen, and perhaps the whispers across the rugby communities will reveal who it may be, as we know that it's a very tight knit community and one with loose lips because secrets don't stay secrets for long in American rugby. So we will certainly come to learn shortly who that may be and what the makeup will look like in terms of the coaching staff, and as we get closer to solidifying some more of these details, we'll continue to be able to share it with you here as the Rugby Rant podcast show. As you know, we aim to grow rugby one fan at a time. And at the core is always you, the fan. And we'll continue to be able to share as much information whenever we get it, week after week here on this show, with the help of course, Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt, myself, Ty Brogger, and on behalf of John Cullen, again, pleasure to be able to have you with us. Thank you very much again for joining us, and perhaps we will see you lace up one more time. Right? Charlotte's still knocking, right?
Everything going to trade that hat in for the East Coast hat?
Wherever it may be, man, we will support you.
Oh, yeah, maybe this is my hint. Yeah, come back.
Already, you just love staring in the pot, though, don't you?
I'm not. Everything hurts. My couch is nice.
All right. So once again, fans, it has been a tremendous opportunity to be able to spend this time with you talking about American rugby, what we do here week after week. As I said before, it's continue to grow rugby one fan at a time. And all of that is with your help. So again, thank you for tuning in to episode 158 of the Rugby Rant podcast. And we will see you at the next.